What is up, everybody? Mr. Curtis here. Welcome to 5.2a, the American Revolution, aka the Revolutionary War, aka the War of Independence, aka whatever else you want to call it. This is the part that you've probably talked about. This should be a review from stuff that you learned all the way back in fourth grade, probably a little bit of what you learned in seventh grade, or a lot of what you learned in seventh grade. We're going to break this down into a very short video, bare bones, basic. What do you need to know? How does this connect to world history instead of just simply a US focus? So let's rock and roll and get into this. I want to do a little contextualization, kind of back it up. Obviously, the last video was about the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment, and that's going on. But I also just want to explain a few things about European exploration from 1450 to 1750. As we talked about in class, there are a bunch of Europeans who are going out, countries who are going out and exploring. They're taking over, conquering areas in the Americas, conquering areas in South Asia, Southeast Asia, really going around the world and trying to expand territories and expand wealth. With this age of exploration, I would like to remind you that a lot of the wealth is going back to Europe. So there are people who are getting wealthy in the Americas, whether it's Latin America or in the British North American colonies, but most of that wealth is going back to Europe. There are monarchs who are getting wealthy, there's nobles, and there are these joint stock companies. I just want to remind you again, I want to keep this group in your head from now until really in Unit 6, which is the British East India Company. And the British East India Company got their charter, just a little refresher, got their charter from the Queen of England at the time. They go out into South Asia, into India, get spices, tea, things that people want, and then they have a monopoly on trade. So any tea that you're drinking in the British American 13 colonies is coming from that East India Company. So there's people getting wealthy. There's a lot of money to be made, a lot of money to be had, merchants, nobles, people are making money. Okay? The second thing is there's mercantilism in the Americas. This is limited. It limits who the colonists can trade with. So for example, if you are in Spanish Latin America, you can only trade with Spain and sell your products, and you can only buy your products from Spain. So this really makes the mother country wealthy. The exception to this was, and we talked about this when we in Unit 4, is North America and the 13 colonies have pretty much been able to do what they want. There's not a strict mercantilist policy like there is in the Spanish colonies, like the Dutch, like the French. It's a little looser. So in this case, the American colonists really are able to develop their own businesses, develop their own system of trade, where they're not necessarily relying, and they have a lot of freedom. And that's a key to this because they are used to, for the 150 years that they are in existence, they're used to really kind of doing essentially what they want with limited involvement from Britain, and it works out well for the colonists until these two things happen, which are two causes of the American Revolution. Number one is the Enlightenment. So this idea of the Enlightenment, natural rights, laws of nature, all these things are going on, and the Enlightenment thinkers their ideas are coming to the Americas. They're coming to the 13 colonies. And the founding fathers, the people who you would think of as the people who helped frame the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, all those things, are going to be reading Enlightenment ideas and Enlightenment works. And the ideas that they are promoting and pushing are going to be based on the Enlightenment. Equality, freedom, consent of the governed, separation of powers, laws of nature. All of those things are going to come out of the Enlightenment. So a key to this is the Enlightenment is a huge piece of this. It's going to be a cause of the American Revolution. The American Revolution could not have existed without the Enlightenment ideas and principles and all those things. The second thing is, and this is a little bit longer, and this is something that you probably learned at some point, which is the French and Indian War. It is between the French and the British, or the French colonies, which are here, and the British colonies, which are here. And they're not just competing here in North America. They're also competing in India, in other places around the world, where these two sides are really going against each other. This is also a huge issue because the British, along with the American colonists, along with some Native American groups, are going to fight against the French and some other Native American groups, and they're going to fight. The British end up winning this war, or known as the French and Indian War, at least in the Americas. It's very clear cut. And the British colonists are able to expand from what was their limit of the Appalachian Mountains right here, and they're going to be allowed to expand, the American colonists, into the Mississippi River and the Mississippi River Valley. Because wars cost money, and the British government just helped the American colonists win this war, they are going to tell the American colonists that they need to pay for this war, that they are going to have to pay some way. And the only way governments can force people to pay is by raising taxes. And all of these taxes start popping up towards the or the American colonists. So we're going to they see the Stamp Act, the Tea Act, the Intolerable Acts. All of these acts, if you remember learning about them in fourth grade or you remember learning about them in seventh grade, are going to be taxes that are placed on the British people, the British American colonists. They are going to be forced to pay these taxes. And they don't like it. They haven't been doing this for a long time. Now, they did pay taxes, but not to the degree that all of these taxes are starting to pop up now. And they aren't happy about it because they've been left pretty much to their own devices for the past 150 years. Now, all of a sudden, they have taxes on everything. And the motto becomes no taxation without representation, meaning we, as the 13 colonies, do not have any representation in British Parliament, yet you are taxing us, yet we have no say. And that concept of we don't have a say in the laws being passed against us is an Enlightenment principle. And they are basing a lot of this on the Enlightenment. So as a result of this, the Revolutionary War starts. You guys know the Boston Tea Party. We're dumping the tea into the harbor. By the way, that's the British East India Company's tea. Lexington and Concord, and the whole Revolutionary War happens. And we're going to fast forward a long time. And the American colonists win. They declare themselves the United States of America, which is 13 states at the time. And the outcome becomes it's the first democracy created since the classical period. And by classical period, I mean the Greece and Roman times where there was the first ideas of democracy in the Western world. They're going to totally use principles of the Enlightenment. So not only are they free of the British rule, but they're going to have a constitution, which is written laws where everyone must follow these laws. No one is above the law. And there's separation of powers. There's different branches of government. Each government has a role. And then there's situations where how do the governments check each other's power to make sure no one has too much. And then there's the Bill of Rights, which guarantees certain rights. These are rights that are written about by Enlightenment people: freedom of speech, freedom of the press, right to search and seizure. All of these things that come up that are ingrained from the Enlightenment are going to be part of it. So the first democracy ever. And you can imagine if they have a democracy, they're going to inspire other people to have a democracy as well. The second thing is, and I just want to mention that even though we're talking about all these Enlightenment ideas and freedom and equality and kumbaya and we're all great, there are a bunch of groups of people who are not equal. One is African Americans. There's going to be slavery in the United States until 1865. In fact, slavery is in the Constitution with the slave trade and how long it can last until. Also, some people, even when slavery ends, there are people in this country who were not able to vote until the 1960s. There are people who are still alive today who lived in a time where they couldn't vote because of the color of their skin. Also, women are not going to be able to vote until the 1910s. And these two concepts and ideas we will come back to because they're both very important. And it's just important to realize that, like, although this concept of this amazing country is developed, there are people who are still left out from the outset, from the initial part of it going. So that's what I got. The key to this is they are going to inspire other revolutions. They're using Enlightenment ideas. Other people are going to follow suit, which is going to get into the French, the Haitian, and the South American revolutions, which we will talk about later. If you have any questions, let me know. Write it down. I'm out.